In the moment, you said nothing, telling yourself it was easier to simply keep the peace, that maybe you were being too sensitive, that maybe they meant well. Later, rinsing a mug, folding laundry, walking to the mailbox, the exact words you actually needed arrive, clear and complete, considerably too late to have been useful in the actual moment they were needed. Carl Jung's understanding of how the psyche processes genuine emotional insult offers a precise explanation for why real clarity so reliably shows up after the moment has already passed rather than during it. Jung believed that a direct emotional insult, particularly one that catches you genuinely off guard, temporarily overwhelms the exact cognitive resources needed to produce a clear, considered response. In the actual moment, the conscious ego is genuinely occupied managing the immediate impact of what just happened, and the more considered reflective part of the mind, the part capable of finding the precise, honest words the situation actually calls for, simply has not had the necessary time or the necessary quiet to complete its work yet. The words were never actually missing. They were still being formed, considerably slower than the actual moment allowed for. This explains why these words so reliably surface specifically during simple, repetitive, low attention tasks, since this kind of quiet, undemanding activity is precisely what allows the mind's slower, more reflective process to finally finish the work it began the moment the original insult actually occurred. The mug, the laundry, the mailbox, none of these tasks require enough conscious attention to interfere with this ongoing background processing, and the actual honest response finally completes itself in exactly the kind of quiet space these small ordinary tasks happen to provide. Here's what makes this understanding genuinely important rather than simply an explanation for frustrating timing. Jung's broader work on self respect and genuine individuation suggests that a person who consistently draws real, honest boundaries has not actually developed considerably faster reflexes than everyone else. They've developed a genuine willingness to actually deliver these delayed words once they finally arrive, returning to the person or the situation afterward, rather than simply filing the clear, honest response away privately and letting the original moment stand unaddressed. This also explains why self respect tends to develop and strengthen with genuine accumulated life experience, since a person gradually collects over years real felt data about which specific situations and which specific people tend to leave them feeling drained and which ones leave them feeling genuinely steady, and this accumulated pattern recognition makes both the delayed clarity and the willingness to actually act on it considerably easier to access than it was earlier in life, when both the recognition and the caring do vaguely. Here is what actually helps in working with this pattern directly. It helps to trust the delayed clarity as genuinely valid information, even though it arrives too late for the original moment, rather than dismissing it simply because the timing feels inconvenient, since this delayed insight is exactly as accurate and exactly as worth acting on as it would have been had it arrived instantly. There is a second thing worth practicing directly. It helps to actually return to the person or the situation once this clarity arrives, even hours or days later, offering the honest words that were not yet available in the original moment, since a genuine, if delayed, boundary still communicates real, valuable information, and it is never actually too late to state clearly what you needed to say, even considerably after the fact. There is a third, genuinely important piece worth understanding. Building this specific willingness does not require becoming someone who instantly perfectly responds to every difficult moment as it happens. It requires simply trusting your own slower process enough to actually act on what it eventually produces, rather than treating delayed clarity as somehow less legitimate than the version that might have arrived in real time. If you recognize this specific pattern of finding the right words only after the moment has already passed, hear this clearly. This was never evidence of being slow, weak, or somehow less capable than people who respond instantly. according to Jung's understanding, it reflects a genuine, ordinary feature of how the mind actually processes real emotional insult. And this deserves honest trust rather than continued dismissal simply because the timing feels frustrating. Think honestly about the last time genuine clarity arrived only after a difficult moment had already passed, and consider whether you actually returned to address it, or whether the clear, honest words simply stayed private, unspoken. Right below the single word for the specific boundary you wish you had stated in that exact moment. Naming it honestly and considering whether it is still worth actually saying now, even later than you originally wanted to, is the real and practical way you begin trusting your own delayed clarity as genuinely worth acting on. There is a final piece worth naming, since it offers real practical reassurance about what this pattern reveals about your own genuine growth. Research on self esteem across the lifespan confirms that people generally do grow steadier with real accumulated experience. And this specific pattern, delayed clarity, gradually followed by real actual courage to speak it, is one of the concrete visible ways this steadiness actually develops. Noticing yourself returning to address something you once would have simply let go is genuine, measurable evidence of this exact growth. Because the right words always arriving too late was never, according to Carl Jung's understanding, evidence of being slow or somehow deficient. It was a genuine, ordinary feature of how the mind processes real emotional insult, and trusting that delayed clarity enough to actually act on it was always the real practical path toward the kind of steady self respect that accumulates genuinely over an entire lifetime.